begin. So all week I've been talking about the niyamas, and if you're unfamiliar, the niyamas are the personal observances, the practices that we can cultivate within ourselves along the yogic path to help keep us true to core sense of presence within us, which really helps us cultivate will and discernment of our thoughts and actions, and create a lot of space. So, if you haven't been in class all week, I'll just briefly touch on the first three. So, Saucha is the sense of purity of mind and body. And I think of your space too, kind of like the physical space you live in. And the next is Santosha, which is a sense of contentment, kind of not always having to keep up with the Joneses, be content with how your circumstances are at any given moment, which is different than resigning yourself to be in a situation that you can change. And then yesterday we worked on tapas, which is this sense of cultivating discipline and will within you. And then I'll talk about the last two together today. So first is Svadhyaya. I was never sure if I can pronounce. Don't take my Sanskrit to be so perfect, okay? So because I don't speak the language, but essentially it's the essence of self-reflection, self-study, kind of inquiring within about how you are, not only in your emotional states, but what motivates you. Where is your thinking mind leading you? If you come across a way in which your ignorance has harmed yourself or another, which I think we've really learned a lot about this year in particular with the racial justice issues that have come up. Me as a white woman can't possibly understand what a Black person is going through. And to know where you don't know is just as important as learning what you do know, and trying to keep open to the ways that we can improve and change and shift our thinking. So the open mind mentality of realizing that there's always more to discern and know. And then a piece of that, of course, is on the spiritual realms, where are we reflecting about our true nature, in connection with all beings and in connection with the flow of whatever your spiritual beliefs are. So a part of Svadhyaya is not only self-contemplation, but contemplation of the deeper truths of our nature and our connection to all things. And then lastly, Ishvara Pranidhana, which is this is the last of the niyamas, and it's a sense of giving yourself over to something higher than yourself, being in service in the world. And we all know the experience, the feeling of when your actions are not just for yourself, but for another. It feeds us. It feeds us to be in selfless action. And this is the beautiful, wheel that goes round and round, that the more we do for others, the more we ultimately do for ourselves. So from a yoga perspective, Bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion, and Karma yoga is the yoga of action. And these two acts, devotion and action, are a big piece of Ishvara Pranidhana. It's not just surrendering to a higher power, but it's also being in action, being in service to others. So those are the niyamas, and they're such wonderful observances that we can cultivate within ourselves to fortify our character, to have the capacity to improve our relationships, to know where we are and what we need to do to grow. So it's very useful to work with the niyamas, and much more useful to practice than to just like, oh, now I know what the niyamas are. But to really put this into practice is really where the rubber meets the road. So if you struggle with any of these, which I know are difficult, choose one to work with for a while. Choose one of the yamas, maybe one that's comes easily to you, maybe one that is harder for you, whatever you want, but just study it, look it up, you pull up in your yoga books and kind of really feel into a niyama and make it a practice for yourself, and see what that feels like. So of course our asana practice, our physical practice of yoga, has so much capacity to teach us about the niyamas. We practice every time we step on our mat. It's so much more than just moving our bodies around. When we connect to the inner workings, the inner space, when we find our breath, when we feel the presence of our practice, we open up the capacity for these niyamas to not be overwhelming, but to be something that we are capable of cultivating. So always have these tools be just that. They're guideposts for us that have been given to us from yogis long ago that have met with the same problems that we do today. So as I said the other day, when you're working with a niyama and you find yourself falling short in your personal um, actions or your thoughts or whatever it is, don't get upset and have blame and shame be a part of your yogic path. It's really just about, I'm human, I make mistakes, and now I'm going to try again, and I'm going to pick myself up and explore this. And so have a curious beginner's mind for all of this, if you choose to kind of work with the niyamas a little bit more. So let's go ahead and sit up straight and tall and come into um, a comfortable position for you. And that could be standing, sitting, lying down, really discover, diverge off the typical yogic path. You're home alone. Well, maybe not you're alone, but you're in your own practice. So let's cultivate that for what it needs to be for you today. I'm just a little teeny bit of a bushwhacker through the forest guiding you. I'm agree with me too. All right, so close your eyes and find your breath. What does it feel like to drop in? And sometimes when we close our eyes and have that little bit of pratyahara, we get to draw inward, remove some of the distractions, and seek a deeper sense of presence. Can you relax anything that's possible to relax? Your shoulders, your skull, your face. Drop some weight down into the pelvis and feel the spine grow a little bit more. What does it feel like to yield, to feel the earth below you, to connect and resist the slump? So as we drop down, also rise up and remove the tug of war of those oppositional forces. See if you can cultivate harmony. Feel your breath rise and fall. What does it feel like to have an open chest for breathing? Can you feel your diaphragm? And if you have trouble sensing the relaxation and movement of your diaphragm, start a little higher. Maybe melt your collarbones first. Melt those top ribs and just allow the feeling of the breath to expand up high. And then see what it feels like to drop that breath down, to let the feeling, the sensation, the awareness drop into the middle ribs, the bottom ribs, all the way into the sensation of your diaphragm. We have a complicated lifelong history with our diaphragms. So if you have a funky breathing pattern that you've cultivated, it's difficult to make changes. So be very patient with yourself. Breathe through your nose as best as you can. See if you can cultivate that through your practice, especially the inhales. See if you can cultivate that metronome feeling of breath, where the breath becomes the rhythm of your practice. The exhale slightly lingering. Now, this might be easy too when we're just relaxed and sitting, but as you work, See if you can keep this in the front of your awareness, this sense of steady rhythm of breath. Place your palms together at your heart and bow in. Offer an intention. Maybe it has something to do with the niyamas, maybe it has nothing to do with the niyamas, and you just need to focus on something in your practice today to support you. Can you light up this intention, align to the intention, and then release the hands. And let's go ahead and come onto our back. All right. So once again, I may not be able to do a lot of the practice today, so listen to me more than look at me. Okay. So stretch your body out. Okay, lengthen through your spine. Okay, reach into some space. Deep breaths here. Allow your joints to pool like water spreading out. See if you can imagine that you're floating in water so that the joints have lost their gravitational pull. Everything's spacious in the body. And let's connect with that breath again. See what it feels like to notice. Are you a top breather? Are you a diaphragm puller? So when you inhale, where's your diaphragm going? Is it going wide and down, or are you a little reversed in your pattern? And is the diaphragm kind of pulling up toward your heart when you inhale? So the healthy pattern is to let the diaphragm draw down and wide on your in-breath. So notice what you can do to cultivate that. On your exhales, letting the diaphragm rebound in and up. Sometimes it's easier to catch this wave when we're horizontal than when we're standing or sitting. So take advantage to train the diaphragm in movement that's healthy while we're on our back. Stretch your arms, lengthen them up over your head. And always, if anything needs to be modified in your practice, if your joints don't move a certain way, then you just go where you're capable of in your range of motion. So if you can, stretch your arms overhead and stretch the right side a little longer, stretch the left side of your body a little longer. Just feel maybe your hips are starting to shift a little bit where you stretch one foot away and that heel drops and the other lifts. And what does this feel like in your low back? What does it feel like in your sideways? How does it feel to open up your ribs? And then bring your knees into your chest. Detach from any expectations of your practice and just be in the breath. Be here now. Rocking a little bit if it feels nice. Sway from side to side. And then circle the knees. And let this be a little, not only soothing for the hip joints, but a little bit of a massage for the back, the sacroiliac joints. And go the other direction. Swing your knees, circling the other way. And then let's pull the knees apart from each other and bring them back in. And just find that sense of range of motion in your hip joints. And listen closely into the joints. Can you feel how are they even to each other? Not? Are there snaps, crackles, pops? Do you have any discomfort? And then the right knee comes into the chest. Left leg is long on the floor. Stretch your leg long and stretch your crown long. So feel the extension in your body. Wake up your feet. Put the eyes on the bottom of your feet into wide awake mode and spread them out and look around. Feel free to roll around in your toes, your ankles. Compress that knee and snug. And then change sides. And always, if your hip or knee don't compress well, if it's your knee and this hurts, maybe hold behind your knee to your hamstring so that your knee has a little more space. And just see what's available to you. Feel the reach of the crown. Feel the reach all the way down to your foot. Wake up the feet again. Open up the calves a little bit. Wiggle around in your toes. How's that metronome breath doing now? See what happens as you focus on different things. And you turn away from the breath. Do you lose connection with it? Let's go ahead and release. Arms and legs come wide on the ground. Stretch your hands, wiggle toes and fingers, and then exhale, knees into your chest, lift up your chin and curl into a little ball. Inhale and open your legs wide, spread out your hands and feet, and then exhale and draw the knees into the chest, chin up. One last time. Maybe my breath is slower or faster than your breath. Always take your practice in the pace and comfort that you need it to be. And then once you're ready, roll over onto your side and come up onto your hands and your knees. So as you find all fours, spread out your hands. Maybe your toes curled under, maybe they lay flat, and let's start to move through some cat-cows. Rounding and arching the back, taking care, noticing your spine. What are the ways in which you're comfortably moving today? Can you feel each vertebrae have a little moment in the sun? So revel in how well your spine moves, have gratitude for the working of your body. Even if there's things that are a little tender or bothering you, let's marvel at our complexity and our health. How's the breath now? All right, and then let's go ahead and find any kind of movement that feels nice. You can stay moving in some cat-cows. Perhaps you want to roll around in your shoulders or move your hips a little bit. So just find whatever movement is available to you. Notice what feels good and follow that. How's your breath? All right, and then let's stretch back towards child's pose. Take your hips back toward the heels. And once again, if child's pose is unavailable to you for knees or hip reasons, maybe you need a bolster or some blankets behind your knees. Maybe you need it in front of on the tops of your thighs so your hips don't have to flex so much. Just see what's available. If your arms can comfortably stretch out, do that. If they're not so comfortable, take the arms wider until you get a range of motion that's happy for your shoulders. Walk the hands over to the left side of the mat and open up the right rib cage and feel that space. Relax your head, open up the sides, breathe deeply. And then come back to center and find your way over to the other side. So even here, you can start to have that sense of self-study, self-observance. Now, how much of the time do you just kind of plow through the day and go, and keep busy to avoid really taking that time for contemplation? How are you? Where's your mind going these days? How does your body feel? What's the state of your heart like? All right, and then come back up onto all fours and let's find our way into our warm-up twist. So reach the left arm up in the air. As you're ready, exhale and slide that shoulder underneath, finding a twist on this side. Breathing well, seeing what it feels like to open up the back ribs, to open the back breath. What does the diaphragm feel like in the back of your body? How are you? Can you relax your head? Can you melt the eyes? Is the base of your skull soft? All right, and then inhale and reach your arm all the way back up in the air. And then place that hand down onto the ground. And let's find the second side. Arm lifting up. Exhale and slide that arm underneath you, coming into a twist. Let the shoulder reach down to the floor if you're able. Gaze toward the ground. Keep the eyes turning down so the neck relaxes. Take the thigh bones back. Feel as much space as the breath can allow. It's tricky to breathe with twists sometimes. We have a resistance of our obliques in a counter action to our diaphragm. So there's a meeting of resistance there. So melt into that place as best as you can. Breathe. And then relax and bring your arm back up in the air, finding an open chest, and then place the hand down onto the ground. Spread out your hands and your toes and lift up to dog pose. Find your breathing and experiment. Do you want to be still? Do you want to move around a bunch? Sometimes our first dog pose of the day, we need to have a little bit of mobility. So if you want to bend one knee and stretch the other calf, or move your hips around, move your shoulders around your head, Just find yourself. Let this be a pose of exploration, finding how you are in your body today, right now. Can you welcome yourself home? Can you welcome the mind to be living in the body? Root into the index finger mounds and thumb mounds so that you're not living in the outer wrists. Hug the hands a little bit toward each other to strengthen the sides of your chest, your serratus, and your lats so that you have the sense of support and you're not just leaning into your shoulders. Feel the reach and length through your spine. Lift your knees up into the pelvis so that there's a sense of lifting and from hands and feet all the way up to the apex of the pose. Relax your head. How is that metronome breath here? All right, and then walk your feet forward. Come into Uttanasana. Fold, bend your knees. See how deeply you need to bend your knees for your back to feel okay. Relax your neck. Feel free to bobble things around a little bit. You can wag your tail, roll your shoulders, anything that feels nice. Inhale for a halfway lift. The spine is growing here. Exhale and melt to fold again. Push off your feet, rise up, reaching your arms to the sky. Remember, there's so much up and down in yoga. Typically, if you're in a vinyasa class, there's lots of it. So if when you come up, you're dizzy, just cross one thigh over the other thigh. Squeeze your hands to each other so that you lift your blood pressure up and get that dizziness to go away. Find the reach, open your chest, lean back a little bit, stretch open through your chest, cactus the arms if it feels good, and then take your elbows all the way down, a little closer to your side. So feel the strength in the back of the body when you do this. Hopefully this is nice and gentle for your shoulders. Sometimes cactuses are hard on people's shoulders. Feel the work of the back body as you lift and open your chest. Then one more time, imagine you're pulling yourself on a chin-up bar, so we just have to pull ourselves down. Use your lats and bring the elbows toward the body again. Open the chest. One last time, reach the arms up. Exhale, elbows coming down, lower than your shoulders, palms are wide. Notice if your ribs are popping out. See if you can integrate. And then lift the arms up in the air. Fold forward. Bend your knees as much as you need to. Lengthen the spine. Relax the head. Inhale for a halfway lift. The thighs are coming back. Feel the full lift of the back legs. So even stretch the backs of your knees. So often I say don't hyperextend, but sometimes we need to open up the backs of our knees. Spread open the feet as well. Lift the thigh bones. Actually lift all the way from your arches up into the inner groins, the outer arches all the way up into the outer hips, and find a half lift here. So you can put your hands on blocks if you want, or put your hands on your thighs or your shins, but our legs are straight and our spine is straight, feeling the extension. Exhale and melt and bend your knees. Fold a little bit more, folding from the hips, not from the spine. Let's step our left foot back. Right foot comes forward to a lunge. Open the heart here. See if you can feel those muscles that you activated in the back of your body when we did those cactus arms. Feel the back of your body here a little bit. Integrate the core into that. How is the metronome breath here? Let's rise all the way up. Crescent lunge. Bring yourself so your knee can bend deeply. Maybe your knee needs to bend not as deeply today. Just find where your body is. Decide where you want your arms to be. Traditionally, they're up, but that's not for everybody. So if you want your arms out, or you can come back to those V cactuses we did before, or some platter arms, whatever's working with you. If you feel need for centering, place your hands together. Find your breath. Can you observe? What is it that you're feeling in your body? Is your mind here? How's your breath working for you today? Can you notice the emotional states in your breath having a relationship to each other? And then let's release our hands down to the ground and begin to straighten that leg a little bit as you tuck your chin toward your chest. And then breathe again, bending your knee. Inhale or exhale, what feels best for you? Straighten the front leg, tuck your chin toward your chest. Come back to a lunge and walk your back foot forward. Fold pretty deeply. Let the knees bend a lot. Bring your toes to touch unless you know you need a block between your knees for Utkatasana. So if you want to stick a block between your knees, then your toes won't be together. Squat quite low. So we're dropping our hips in line with our knees or a little higher, but not super high. Find your breath and reach your arms back behind you. Extend through your heart. Feel the roots of your feet. Find the heels, lift the arches. Root the heels, lift the arches, all the way up into the inner groins. And then find chair pose. Maybe your arms come up. Maybe your hands are at your heart. Put your arms, whatever's going to serve your breath. So be in service of the breath. Stay in that metronome vibe of your breathing. Breathe through your nose. Let your diaphragm move. Feel the grounding. Let your feet weight themselves. And then stand up straight and tall. Open up through your chest again, arms up. Exhale and fold forward. Bend your knees a lot. Halfway lift. Spine is growing here. Get long in the body. And then release and melt. Let's step our right foot back. Our left foot is forward. Finding a lunge on this side. You can use blocks like I'm doing, or your hands can be on the ground. Find your roots. Feel your feet. Can you yield? Can you rise? Once you feel stable, come on up. Crescent lunge. Bring yourself into openness. So what do you love about this pose? Where do you want your arms to be to give you a sense of space and breath? To give you a sense of presence? So if we're working with this niyama of self-study, of self-awareness, knowing, where we fall short, where we close our minds, where we are very open. Can you discern where the challenges are for you? What does it feel like, even in a simple yoga posture like this, to be in service of something greater than yourself? How can you open your heart and offer it right here? Remember that feeling of bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. Where are you putting your attention? Attention is the beginning of devotion. Place your hands down onto the ground and let's start to bend and straighten the front knee. Move with the metronome breath. How are you breathing? Move your shoulders away from the ears. Are you being kind to yourself? Are you moving within the range of motion that's safe? Are you filling yourself all the way in the sense of your awareness and your presence? Are there places that you're hiding from in your body? Are there places you're hiding from in your mind? All right, and then let's find two hands coming down onto the ground and step back to a plank. Hold steady here. Hug in toward the midline. Fine, you can always put your knees down onto the ground if you need more support. And this is not a giving up. It is a stabilization that you're looking for. So if knees come down, this is not, oh, I couldn't do that. This is, I'm giving myself the best chance to do this correctly, align myself well, use the proper muscles. Shoulder blades are down, hug to the midline. Then when you're ready, everybody's gonna come down onto the ground, onto your belly. So lie down. Find your breath, rest here for a moment. When you're ready, come up to Cobra Pose. So find that sense of opening through your heart and then exhale and melt. Try not to hold the breath at the top of Cobra Pose as we do a couple more. Pay attention to that rhythm of flow, that the inhale rises and the exhale softens back down toward the floor. Are you stable through your pelvis? Are you stable through your core and your legs as you last time come up? And the last time you let things drop back down to the earth. Pause here for a moment. Turn your head one way or the other. Rest your body prone, down on the ground. Can you release everything to the floor? Can you feel the back body breath? Can you fill yourself up in the back of you? Feel your diaphragm move back here. And then let's go ahead and find our way back onto all fours. Have a moment anytime you do some back bends. When you come back, it's nice to not go right into a forward bend. If we go back bend, forward bend, constantly, we turn into one of those paper clips that can break real easily if you play with it. So we want to have this neutral zone to just swirl around our spine, get back to neutral, and then find a forward fold in dog pose. So reach your hands into the ground, extend through the spine, breathe here, and find that metronome pace of your breath. Dog pose is a deep pose of introspection. We're turned in on ourselves, we're inverted, we're forward bending. We have this quiet that can happen in this pose. Breathe into that space, cultivate the capacity for self-reflection, self-observation. Do you ever feel in your practice that you are connected to something greater than yourself, even if it's just your breath? The breath is this beautiful connection to all things. Let's walk our feet forward and come into Uttanasana. Fold in half. Halfway lift, you can hold the blocks. Exhale and melt back down. Push off your feet, rise up and turn to the long edge of your mat and take your feet wide apart. We're going to come into just waking our hips up a little bit more. So let's find a pretty deep squat, and you can either have hands on blocks, you can have hands on the floor, you can come all the way down to the point where you can lift your toes of that straight leg off the ground and just have your heel on the floor. If you're very mobile, be very careful to not hyperextend your straight knee. Extend the spine instead. Find your breath. And then we're going to slide over to the other side. Maybe you have one knee that isn't, as flexible as the other. It's okay to have your hands up on blocks and not go very deep. Stretch into the inner thigh. Stretch your spine forward. Try not to hyperextend your knee. Breathing deeply here. Metronome breath. Observe how you feel. Come back up, finding a wide squat here. So the feet are out, turned out. Instead of turned forward, let your knees follow your feet. Lean forward, take your elbows inside your knees, and squat to the point where maybe your pelvis can be in line with your knees. Maybe it's higher, but just go down to that level if you're capable. Shoulders away from the ears. Spread out the bones of your feet. Feel the big toe mounds, the pinky toe mounds, the inner and outer heels, and feel that sense of grounding. Push into the ground to feel the legs in your, the muscles in your legs work a little harder. And then we're going to climb all the way up to stand, reaching the arms out. If you are dizzy, take a moment, squeeze to the midline again. Okay, if you're not dizzy, keep yourself out there. Sometimes I teach this by holding a block. You don't have to hold your block. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this very well. So we're going to come into a lunge on one side and then slide over to the other side and rise all the way back up. So if your back is feeling gingerly like mine is, maybe you're just a little bit in a little bit of rotation. If you're feeling real solid and good in your body, maybe you're coming into a deeper squat and going from one side to the other. We're going to go in both directions. So choose a direction that you're moving and breathe as you're doing this. Transfer weight. Feel the yield and the push off to the other side. Be very mindful that you're not just rolling your back around. We're using the legs to do this posture. We're not using our spine. And then meet up at the top. Maybe you're holding a block. Maybe you're not. Maybe your arms don't want to go up to the top. Okay. And then we're going to go the other direction. So root into the foot, bend the knee, transfer your weight to the other side, and rise up. So this is a pose of deep flexion in the knees and hips. This is not a pose of rolling the spine around, okay? So let the effort, the stability, and the movement come from your legs. So many muscles in your legs, your quads, your hamstrings, your hips, even your inner thighs. Everything's working, stabilizing with your core. And then as you're ready, maybe meet up at the top again. Stretch your arms straight out to the side. If you're comfortable, open your chest. Take a breath and find goddess pose. You get to decide, if you have a hip that's a little cranky, turn your feet more in, and so that you're less wide. Let your knees and your toes be on the same plane. So what you don't want to have is your toes turned out and your knees caved in. So follow that trajectory of balance. And who cares how low you go? Who cares how wide out you go? Be where you're able to be upright in your spine, stable and grounded. Put your arms anywhere, any mudra you want. That's going to help you stabilize. And you can be high. I'm pretty high up right now. It's kind of not so comfortable for my body to go down, but maybe your body's real deep today and you're able to stay quite low. So be where you are. Breathe deeply, relax the shoulders, spread out the bones of your feet. Those eyes on the bottom of your feet are looking into the earth. And then go ahead and stand up. Straight arms, straight legs, starfish your body open, expand, and then heel toe your feet in a little bit. Turn toward the front of your mat and come back to dog pose. Okay, so as you find your way into this posture, feel the retreat that can happen when your head drops below your heart. It's such a beautiful way to cultivate that introspection, the interoception. If you're not sure what that word means, it means like feel at the inside of your body. See what it feels like to sense your body on the inside. How is your breath feeling? Okay, let's come forward into a plank. Once again, knees can come down, whatever you need to stabilize your body. Big breaths. Come down and rest on the floor on your belly. Knees can come down first to support that. Let's take our hands underneath our forehead and take your legs wide on the mat. Take a deep breath, legs lift. So knees stay straight. We're lifting from the hips. Both legs are lifting in the air. Find your breath. And then exhale and relax those legs down. Turn your feet out just a little bit more. And we're going to repeat it. Just lifting the legs from the hips. Stabilize through your core. Use your transverse abdominis. Try not to lose sight of stabilizing the back from the front. And release the legs down to the floor. Come up onto all fours. Have some movement. Let the back release from any of that strain of a back bend, so you can swish like a fish. You can swirl in some circles. Enjoy this. The transitions of our practice are often places where we lose our breath or mindfulness. Come home to the breath and the mindfulness. Lift up to dog pose when you're ready. Take a deep breath in. Extend, feel the symmetry. We're about to do something very asymmetrical. Feel the symmetry. And then we're going to come down onto your knees. Turn to the long edge of your mat for Vasisthasana. We're going to do it in a slightly different way than sometimes we do it. There's no rules. There's only principles of movement. So there's so many ways you can experiment with being present in your body. So we're going to, instead of having our bottom knee on the floor with our leg perpendicular, we're going to have our bottom knee on the floor parallel. So we're lining up our hand, our knee, and our 2 feet on one line. If you need to hack the pose for balance, take your right hand out to the right a little bit more off that line. You can have your hand just slightly forward of your shoulder, just slightly. This will stabilize you. Then if you're right on top of your wrist with your shoulder, lift the arm in the air. Now, perhaps this is your pose, and we're just being here. Feel the work in the underbelly of that right hip. Can you feel the work? And then if there's something more you have capacity for, lift your leg in the air, your left leg in the air. You don't have to lift it. You can lift it 1 inch off the ground or 1 foot off the ground. Find the open chest. Breathe your way into this practice. I'm going to keep my foot down. Shoulder blades away from the ears. Feel a sense of stretching open. Maybe if your balance is okay, look up. How's that metronome breath? And then exhale and come back down onto all fours. Swish around the spine. Notice if the work in the outer hip was different, having your legs in line than when we perpendicular our leg. Let's go ahead and find the second side. Left hand onto the ground. Stack your shin in that same line. So wrist, knee, foot, and foot. If you need to take the left hand more to the left for balance, you can do that. Have the shoulder just slightly behind the wrist instead of stacked right on top. Open the chest. Feel the work of that external rotation of the leg that you're leaning on, your left leg. See if you can feel the deep work in your hip. And if you're not sure, try to isometrically drag your knee to the left and see if you can access it now. Open across the chest, feel the side bodies grow, feel the breath grow. Maybe your arm wants to stretch in a different place. What does it feel like to either have the legs with your foot down or to lift your right leg up in the air? So find your breath no matter what you're doing. Stabilize your core to your spine. Breathe deeply. Try not to arch the back. And then exhale and surrender back down onto all fours. Have a swish or a sway. When we come back to these balancing poses, these transition poses, they're often symmetrical poses. There is an opportunity to refocus, to turn inward, to rediscover our breath. They're not throwaway poses. They're not like, oh, I'm just doing this before the next thing. They are the deep work of integrating your practice. So don't lose sight of them. Curl your toes under and lift to dog pose. Extending through your spine here, breathing deeply. Lift your right leg up in the air. Feel that extension. Stack your right hip over your left hip so that you can feel the front of that hip stretch. Breathe well. When you're ready, square the hips again. Bring your front foot forward to a lunge. When you're up there, go ahead and turn to the side for Virabhadrasana legs. Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2. So how do you want your arms to be in this pose? We've already done a lot of warming of our hips, so let's find our way. And remember, your pose might be high like mine is right now, where I'm not in a super deep bend in my knee. But regardless of how deep you go, there's deep work to be had, no matter where you end up. Can you feel that your right toes will, oops, I'm going left, so I'm not making sense to you. When you're with your right toes, can you turn the toes right? Can you spin the heel left? Nothing moves. It's an isometric contraction to light up the underbelly of that hip again. Find the breath. All right, and then go ahead and come on up. Let's just turn. We're going to do the same pose on the second side. We're going to ping pong a little bit back and forth. So go to the left. Find your way. Where do you want your arms to be? So remember, if we're really cultivating this sense of discernment, of will, of presence, we need to know where we're best in space. And that isn't the lazy man's route, like, no, I don't want to move my arms, so I'm going to just leave them down. Maybe your arms down gives you more capacity to color in the whole body, to breathe deeply. That's way different than if your arms are out, but your shoulders are stuck at your ears and you can't breathe. Okay, so position of where your body in space is fully dependent on how you feel, where you feel stable, where you feel free, where you can breathe well. Long exhales, that metronome breath, relax something. Let's go ahead and spin back to the front of the mat. Lift that left leg high in the air. So you might be turned backwards on your mat, and that's fun. Different viewpoint, right? So lift that left leg high in the air. Stack open your left hip over your right hip. Breathe into the front of your pelvis. And then square the hips. Place your foot down and walk your feet forward. Come into Uttanasana. When you're ready, come up to stand. And if you want to turn around, if you ended up facing backwards on your mat, you can turn around to face forward. We're going to do tree pose, so root into your right foot. So this yielding, feel yourself as a tree. The roots go down, down, down. The knee soft helps you yield. The breath helps you yield. See if you can find that and then rise up. Bring your foot, your left foot, maybe high toward your inner thigh, maybe low on your shin, maybe your toes are still touching the floor for a little extra bit of balance. Whatever you're doing, you're opening up the body. So this deep work in the hip again, you can feel it regardless of where your foot ended up. If you need some support, you can always hold a piece of furniture or a wall. The standing leg, is your thigh bone back? Is your knee soft? Are you able to cultivate a sense of yielding and grounding and rising up through your spine? Put your arms anywhere that's going to give you freedom, space, presence, stability, the capacity to breathe. Find the drishti, your focal point. This is part of these niyamas, is finding our focus, looking inward, discovering what motivates us, noticing where our sense of will is. Breathe well. And then relax. And 2 feet on the ground. Feel free to shake it out. You can shake your hands. You can jump or hop or rock. You can bounce, anything that feels nurturing to your sense of releasing that side. And then let's come to the other side. So we're rooting the left foot deep into the floor. Soften that knee. So if we push our knee back and push our hip out so that we can come into the pose, kind of like this, where we're just leaning on joints. This does not serve us very well. We block energy flow. Soften the knee, keep the hip in, yield into the earth and rebound all the way through your crown. Put your arms anywhere that's going to serve you and serve your breath best. Full breaths in, full breaths out. Ground yourself, support yourself. Make sure you're staying in your breath, and regardless of what your body is ending up doing, even if you're all over the map, wobble, 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 can you stay in the breath? All right, unwind the legs, place the feet down onto the ground, shake out your wrists. Full breaths here. Last of the standing poses, reach your arms up. We're going to take our feet wide on the long edge of your mat. Have a block handy. We're moving into Ardha Chandrasana. So half moon pose, turn your right foot out. Now, sometimes people like to start this pose in triangle pose. Some people in Virabhadrasana or Parsvakonasana. However you want to transition your way into Ardha Chandrasana. Ardha Chandrasana is half moon, so we're going to come up to stand on our leg and open up through our breath. When you come into this pose, you might want to lean against a wall. You might want to have a hand on a piece of furniture. Support yourself if you need it. When you come up, engage your core. See if you can create space from your ribs to your pelvis. Stretch all the way to your heel in the air and lift that leg from the outer hip muscles. See if you can keep the knee you're standing on pointing straight toward your toes instead of turning inward. Soften your knee. Feel the foot yield and rebound. Open up your spine. Where are you in space? Can you feel yourself? And then take a giant step back and come out of the pose. I'll repeat this because it bears repeating. If you're ever in Ardha Chandrasana, I don't know how this came to be in a lot of vinyasa classes, but if you are in this, I'll do my best to demonstrate this. It's a little bit tender for my back, but if you come into Ardha Chandrasana and then turn, I've seen this transition so much where people go right into dancer, or even if they don't go into dancer, they just come down with their foot to come into Uttanasana. This is extremely difficult for your hip joint that you're standing on. You have all your body weight bearing on it, and then you're asking your pelvis to roll over that hip joint. So it's way safer for our 100-year-old hips that we want to preserve to come into Ardha Chandrasana, where you're in a lot of external rotation of that standing weight-bearing leg, and bend your knee and come out so that you're in the same plane. You're not turning into internal rotation. You're staying in external rotation as you come in and out of the pose. This is much safer for your hip joint. So if you want to transition to a different pose afterwards, come out first and then find your way. Let's move to the second side. So however you're choosing to get in, pause for a moment, refocus, breathe, feel your presence, drop into the yielding. As you come up, look at your foot and make sure it stayed straight, that it didn't turn in. Our body will always try to have a broader base of support under it. So stay on that line, track your knee in line with your middle toes. See if you can maintain that external rotation in that standing leg. Use your core to stabilize yourself. Stretch through your spine. The leg in the air is active. Lift, lift, lift. Use those outer hip muscles. Turn the belly to the left. Turn the chest, or to the right. Turn the chest to the right. So we're opening up. And remember, when you're coming back out, we're just going to take a giant step back toward triangle pose or Virabhadrasana or Parsvakonasana. Stay in the external rotation on the way out of the pose. And then let's find our way facing forward. Pause in Tadasana for a moment. Feel the joy of 2 feet on the ground, the groundedness of our having our roots, our 2 feet. Breathe deeply. Let's have deep gratitude for 2 legs to stand upon. Focus your breath. Focus your mind. Stay in the present. Okay, inhale. Open your arms and open your heart. So you don't have to do it so much that you compress your lumbar spine, but just have this joyful open stance where you're giving yourself over, offering yourself. What are you in service of? Who do you serve? Who do you love? And then exhale and fold again. So bend your knees, relax your spine, breathe into Uttanasana, melt here, soften here. And as you're ready, we're going to come all the way down to the ground and come onto um, the floor, onto our knees. So, of course, reverse pigeon pose is right here for you if you need it. But if you want to choose pigeon pose, let's choose pigeon pose or reverse pigeon. So, whatever it is that you need. So, remember when we're doing deep hip work like this, support can be so nice. So if you're coming, let's do the right leg forward first. If you're in pigeon pose, if you're in reverse pigeon pose, right heel on top of left knee. You can support with a blanket underneath your sit bone. If you're hanging in space, your body doesn't relax. Your nervous system will always stay on guard a bit if you are hanging. So use some support so that you can rest yourself in this pose. That doesn't mean collapse. It just means support. Same with your spine. So as you reach your spine forward, place your head on a block so that you have support underneath your head as well. If you're on your back, let your back rest on the floor. Let your head rest on the floor so that you have that sense of the support coming from the earth into you. You can have, if you're in reverse pigeon pose, you can grab behind your thigh. You can put your foot on a piece of furniture so you don't have to use the upper body. You can even keep your your left foot still on the ground. So whatever range of motion is for you today, extend your spine and relax. Melt your shoulders. Come back into that diaphragmatic breath, that metronome breath. All right, and then when you're ready, and maybe you're not ready, you're like, oh, I love this, then just stay. But when you are ready, let's change sides. If you're on your back, just switch your legs. So now our left foot comes on top of our right knee, and you can reach back and grab your hamstrings or the front of your shin. If you're in pigeon pose, support yourself however you need support. So you can let your left leg be in front, your spine is supported, your hip is supported. You can pull your heel out. You can have it close to your sit bone or move it further away. So just find whatever's working for you. Long breaths, steady breaths. Melt anything that's in your power to melt. As we're ready, let's come out of there and come onto your back if you're not already there. Bring your knees to your chest, maybe a little rocking, maybe a little happy baby, whatever you need to release your body for Shavasana. So as we come into our, the end of our practice here, Shavasana is so very important. It's also one of those poses that people sometimes are like, I don't need Shavasana. And I know sometimes at home, especially, it's difficult to stay focused and present with your experience of Shavasana because you've got the to-do list up and running already inside your head. So if you can, just stay. Sometimes weight of an eye pillow or weight of a blanket can help you stay. Have support in any way you need. You can put props under your knees, you can put your calves up on a couch, whatever you need that keeps you warm and grounded. Remember that this is a time of integration, that Shavasana is a really deep and beautiful aspect of our yoga practice. It's a time of self-reflection, not necessarily in the head, but in the body, where we get to just feel the body at rest, to kind of sink and float in the body at rest. Can you stay in that sensation? This is a deep act of self-reflection, self-observation. Let your head rest, let your eyes soften, melt any tension around your jaw, your tongue, your throat, the base of your skull. Can you let your weight come down to the earth and be held? Is your chest free? Is your belly free? If you are surrendering to something higher than yourself, can you practice that in Shavasana? as we find our breath again. Practice the art of surrender. So giving yourself over to something greater than yourself. Can you feel this in your body? Does it feel as if you can slip into a flow of energy that's beyond you? Let's find our way into movement as best as you can. Be slow and present for your transitions. First, come onto your side and then find your way up to sit. Place your palms at your heart as you're ready. There's no rush. Notice if there's something gained from your practice in this realm of the Niyamas: discipline and will, purity, spaciousness, contentment, self observation and awareness, the ability to surrender. These are all gifts that we give others as well as ourselves. So let's offer our practice. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. So good to see you. Have a